My friends, I want to talk to you today about something powerful, something that can change your relationships, your decisions, and even your destiny. It's called emotional intelligence. And I believe, just as the Bible tells us to seek wisdom, we are also called to develop emotional wisdom. We live in a world filled with knowledge, technology, and information. But do we have wisdom? Do we have understanding? People can be rich in knowledge but poor in wisdom, knowing facts but failing in relationships, in leadership, in self-control. The world calls it emotional intelligence, or EQ, but I believe it is part of God's great design for how we should live. Self-awareness, the foundation of growth. The Bible tells us, examine yourselves to see whether you are in the faith. Test yourselves. 2 Corinthians 13:5. Before we can lead others, before we can control our actions, we must first understand ourselves. Do you truly know why you react the way you do? Why you feel anger, sadness, or fear? Many people walk through life like a ship without a rudder, tossed around by emotions they don't understand. But God calls us to self-awareness. The first step to raising your EQ is to seek wisdom, understand your emotions, and master them before they master you. Empathy, the bridge to love. When Jesus walked this earth, he saw the suffering of the people, and he was moved with compassion. Matthew 9:36. True emotional intelligence means learning to see the world through the eyes of others, to step into their shoes, and to feel what they feel. It is not about just knowing your own emotions, but about connecting with others in love and understanding. Too often, people judge before they listen. They speak before they understand. But I tell you today, if you want to raise your EQ, if you want to live a life of purpose and peace, you must learn empathy. You must learn to listen, to feel, and to love like Christ. Self-control, the power to overcome. One of the greatest signs of wisdom is self-control. The book of Proverbs tells us, "Whoever is slow to anger has great understanding, but he who has a hasty temper exalts folly." Proverbs 14:29. My friends, have you ever let anger get the best of you? Have you spoken words you wish you could take back? Have you made decisions in the heat of emotion that later led to regret? This is why raising your EQ is so important. A person who is ruled by their emotions will be ruled by chaos. But a person who can master their emotions, who can stay calm in conflict, who can respond with patience instead of rage, will find peace, success, and favor. Raising your EQ is raising your life. If you want to live a powerful life, if you want to grow in wisdom, you must raise your EQ. You must practice self-awareness, grow in empathy, and develop self-control. But most of all, you must seek God's wisdom. Because true emotional intelligence is not just about managing emotions, it's about aligning them with truth, with love, and with purpose. So, I leave you with this. Will you take responsibility for your emotions? Will you seek wisdom and understanding? Will you commit today to raise your EQ so that you may live a life of peace, purpose, and power? May God bless you all as you grow in wisdom. Amen. Emotional intelligence is a gift, but it is also a great responsibility. It is a gift because it is something within us, placed there by the Creator, designed to help us navigate the world, to connect with others, to lead with wisdom, and to walk in peace. But it is also a responsibility because it is not something that simply works on its own. Like any gift, it must be nurtured, cultivated, and developed. It must be stewarded well, just as we are called to steward every other aspect of our lives, our talents, our faith, our relationships, and our decisions. Many people go through life without realizing the power of emotional intelligence. They react to situations without thinking. They let their emotions control them, rather than controlling their emotions, and they struggle with relationships, communication, and self-awareness. And yet, God has given each of us the ability to grow in wisdom, to gain understanding, to develop a heart that discerns not only our own emotions, but the emotions of those around us. The question is not whether we have emotional intelligence, but rather whether we will take responsibility for developing it, strengthening it, and using it in a way that glorifies God and blesses those around us. Throughout Scripture, we are reminded time and time again that wisdom and understanding are more valuable than gold or silver. The book of Proverbs tells us that a fool gives full vent to his spirit, but a wise man quietly holds it back. Proverbs 29:11. What does this mean? It means that emotional intelligence, the ability to understand, control, and use our emotions wisely, is a sign of wisdom. It is not a weakness to control one's emotions. Rather, it is a great strength. Anyone can lash out in anger. Anyone can be controlled by fear. Anyone can let their emotions lead them into sin. But a wise person, the one who takes responsibility for their emotional intelligence, will learn to manage their emotions rather than be ruled by them. Emotional intelligence is not just about self-control. It is also about self-awareness. Many people go through life unaware of their own emotions. They feel anger, but do not know why. They feel sadness, but do not understand the root of it. They carry bitterness and resentment, but do not recognize the wounds that caused it. And yet, God calls us to examine ourselves. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me, and know my anxious thoughts. Psalm 139:23. When we take responsibility for our emotional intelligence, we do not simply suppress our emotions or ignore them. Rather, we seek to understand them, to learn from them, and to bring them under the guidance of wisdom and faith. Beyond self-awareness, emotional intelligence is also about how we relate to others. Jesus was the ultimate example of emotional intelligence. He was compassionate to the hurting, patient with the weak, gentle with the broken, and wise in the face of opposition. He wept when others wept. He rejoiced with those who rejoiced, and he showed deep empathy and understanding. When he encountered people, he did not simply see their actions. He saw their hearts. He understood what they were feeling. He responded to their deepest needs. Taking responsibility for our emotional intelligence means that we do not simply react to people based on our own emotions, but we take the time to understand theirs. It means we listen before we speak. It means we seek to understand before we judge. It means we choose love, patience, and wisdom rather than responding in haste, anger, or pride. But emotional intelligence is not just about handling emotions in the present. It is also about preparing for the future. Life will bring trials. There will be challenges, conflicts, and hardships. If we do not take responsibility for developing emotional intelligence, we will be easily shaken. We will be like the man who built his house on the sand. When the storms come, we will be swept away. But if we build our lives on the rock of wisdom, if we develop emotional intelligence, we will be prepared. We will have the strength to endure difficulties without being overcome by fear. We will have the patience to handle conflicts without being consumed by anger. We will have the wisdom to navigate relationships without being controlled by pride or selfishness. God has given us emotions for a reason. They are not meant to be ignored, nor are they meant to rule over us. They are a tool. When used correctly, they can help us build strong relationships, make wise decisions, and live with peace and purpose. But we must take responsibility for how we use this tool. We must grow in self-awareness, in empathy, in self-control, and in wisdom. We must choose to be led by understanding rather than impulse. We must seek to align our emotions with truth rather than allowing them to dictate our actions without discernment. This is the call before each of us, to see emotional intelligence not just as something we are born with, but as some.
Self-awareness is one of the most powerful tools for transformation, yet many people go through life without ever truly knowing themselves. They react to circumstances without understanding why. They struggle with emotions they cannot explain. They repeat the same mistakes over and over again, never pausing to examine the patterns of their thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. But the moment a person becomes self-aware, the moment they begin to truly understand themselves, everything changes. Transformation begins with knowing who you are, what drives you, what holds you back, and what needs to change. Self-awareness is not just about recognizing emotions, it is about understanding their roots. It is about going deeper, beyond the surface, to examine the experiences, beliefs, and fears that shape our reactions. When a person lacks self awareness, they live at the mercy of their emotions. They may become angry without knowing why, feel insecure without understanding the source, or struggle in relationships without recognizing their own role in the conflict. But self awareness brings clarity. It allows a person to step back and see the full picture, to recognize their triggers, to understand their strengths and weaknesses, and to take control of their emotional and mental responses rather than being controlled by them. True self awareness requires honesty. It is easy to see the faults in others, to blame circumstances for our struggles, and to justify our actions based on external factors. But transformation only happens when a person is willing to look in the mirror and see themselves as they truly are. This is not about self-condemnation, but about self-examination. It is about asking difficult questions. Why do I react the way I do? What fears are driving my decisions? How do I affect the people around me? What areas of my life need growth and change? These questions are not always comfortable, but they are necessary for transformation. A person who refuses to examine themselves will remain stuck in the same cycles, repeating the same mistakes, trapped in the same limitations. But a person who dares to be honest with themselves can break free. Self-awareness also leads to greater emotional intelligence. Many people think that intelligence is about logic, facts, and reasoning, but the ability to understand and manage emotions is just as important. When a person becomes self-aware, they develop the ability to pause before reacting. Instead of being consumed by anger, fear, or frustration, they learn to identify and process those emotions in a healthy way. They begin to recognize how their emotions affect their behavior and their relationships. They become more patient, more thoughtful, and more intentional in their actions. They learn to communicate more effectively, to listen more deeply, and to respond with wisdom rather than impulse. A lack of self-awareness can create blind spots in a person's life. These blind spots can cause problems in relationships, in careers, and in personal growth. A person may struggle with conflict without realizing that their own defensiveness is a major factor. They may feel stuck in life without recognizing that their own fear of failure is holding them back. They may experience frustration with others without acknowledging how their own words and actions contribute to the problem. But when a person becomes self-aware, those blind spots begin to disappear. They start to see themselves more clearly, and with that clarity comes the ability to change, to grow, and to break free from destructive patterns. Self-awareness is also essential for leadership. A person who does not understand themselves cannot effectively lead others. Whether in the workplace, in a family, or in a community, strong leadership requires the ability to manage emotions, communicate effectively, and build strong relationships. A leader who lacks self-awareness may struggle with pride, insecurity, or emotional outburst. Empathy is the bridge to true connection because it allows us to see beyond ourselves and into the hearts of others. It is the ability to feel what someone else feels, to step into their world, and to experience life through their eyes. Without empathy, relationships remain shallow, interactions feel transactional, and communication becomes mechanical. But when a person truly understands another's emotions, struggles, and joys, an unshakable connection is formed. Empathy is not just about hearing words, it is about listening with the heart. It is not just about observing pain, it is about feeling it alongside another. It is the foundation of deep, meaningful relationships because it fosters trust, understanding, and genuine human connection. In a world that often prioritizes self-interest, competition, and individual success, empathy is a rare but invaluable trait. It takes intentional effort to move beyond our own perspectives and truly consider the emotions and experiences of those around us. Many conflicts arise not because people wish to harm one another but because they fail to understand each other. Misunderstandings occur when one person assumes they know what another is going through without truly taking the time to listen. But when empathy is present, walls come down and real conversations begin. People no longer feel the need to defend themselves or prove their worth because they know they are being heard and valued. Empathy is what allows us to comfort the grieving, encourage the discouraged, and uplift the brokenhearted. It is what allows a parent to understand their child's struggles instead of dismissing them. It is what enables a friend to offer support without judgment. It is what helps leaders inspire and guide others with compassion rather than authority alone. Empathy transforms relationships because it shifts the focus from what do I want to what does this person need. It turns selfishness into selflessness, indifference into care, and distance into closeness. To develop true empathy, one must learn to listen not just with the ears but with the heart. Too often, people listen only to respond rather than to understand. They wait for their turn to speak instead of truly absorbing what is being said. Empathy requires patience. It requires setting aside personal opinions and focusing entirely on the emotions and experiences of another person. It means resisting the urge to minimize their pain, compare their struggles to our own, or offer quick solutions when they simply need to be heard. Empathy is not about fixing people, it is about being present with them. When someone is hurting, they do not always need advice. Sometimes they just need someone to sit with them in their pain and say, I see you. I hear you. You are not alone. The simple act of acknowledging another person's emotions can be incredibly powerful. It validates their feelings, lets them know they are understood, and reassures them that their experiences matter. Empathy is also the key to healing and reconciliation. In moments of conflict, it is easy to focus on our own hurt and ignore the feelings of the other person. But true connection is restored when both sides make the effort to understand each other's perspectives. Instead of saying, you hurt me, empathy allows us to say, I see that we are both hurting instead of assuming the worst. Empathy allows us to ask, what pain might this person be carrying that I do not see? It turns blame into understanding and hostility into compassion. Empathy is not just for those we love or agree with, it is also for those we struggle to understand. It is easy to show empathy toward a friend, but what about a stranger? What about someone who holds different beliefs, comes from a different background, or has made mistakes? True empathy does not pick and choose who deserves compassion. It extends itself even when it is difficult, even when it is I. Mastering emotions leads to a stronger life because it allows a person to navigate challenges with wisdom, build meaningful relationships, and make decisions that align with their values rather than being driven by fleeting feelings. Emotions are a natural and powerful part of life, but when left unchecked, they can lead to impulsive actions, regretful choices, and unnecessary conflicts. On the other hand, when emotions are understood and managed, they become a source of strength, guiding a person toward resilience, stability, and success in every aspect of life. Many people believe that emotions are something that simply happen, as though they have no control over them. They feel anger and lash out, feel sadness and withdraw, feel frustration and give up. But emotions are not meant to control a person, they are meant to be controlled. This does not mean suppressing feelings or pretending they do not exist. It means recognizing emotions, understanding their source, and choosing how to respond rather than reacting without thought. When a person masters their emotions, they no longer live at the mercy of their moods. Instead, they develop the ability to remain calm under pressure, to face adversity with confidence, and to respond to difficulties with wisdom rather than fear or frustration. One of the greatest benefits of emotional mastery is the ability to maintain inner peace despite external circumstances. Life is unpredictable. There will always be challenges, disappointments, and difficult people. If emotions are not managed, a person can easily become overwhelmed by stress, anxiety, or anger. But when emotions are mastered, external situations no longer have the power to dictate a person's internal state. Whether faced with criticism, failure, or unexpected setbacks, a person who has control over their emotions remains steady. They are not easily shaken by temporary difficulties because they have learned to regulate their thoughts and feelings. Emotional mastery also leads to better relationships. Many conflicts arise not because of actual disagreements but because of uncontrolled emotions. A person who reacts in anger rather than responding with understanding can damage relationships that could have been resolved with patience. A person who allows fear to dictate their interactions may struggle to form deep connections. But when emotions are managed well, communication improves, misunderstandings are minimized, and relationships become stronger. Instead of being controlled by pride, frustration, or insecurity, a person learns to approach conversations with empathy, clarity, and wisdom. Self-awareness is an important part of mastering emotions. A person cannot control what they do not understand. Many people go through life reacting to situations without ever questioning why they feel the way they do. They may get angry at small things without recognizing underlying stress. They may feel anxious without identifying the fears driving their emotions. But self awareness allows a person to step back and examine their feelings rather than being consumed by them. It enables a person to ask, why am I feeling this way and what is the best way to respond rather than immediately acting on impulse. With self awareness comes the ability to recognize emotional triggers and develop strategies for handling them in a healthy way. Another key aspect of emotional mastery is learning how to shift emotional states rather than staying stuck in negative feelings. Everyone experiences moments of frustration, sadness, or fear, but staying in those emotions for too long can be harmful. A person who has mastered their emotions knows how to redirect their focus, reframe negative thoughts, and engage in activities that bring a sense of balance and peace. This does not mean ignoring difficult emotions, but rather learning how to process them in a way that leads to growth rather than suffering. Instead of dwelling on anger,